Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday, October 19th meeting of the School Board of the Dover Area School District. If you would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mrs. Benko, could we have the roll call, please?
Mr. Rawhauser.
Present.
Mrs. Maley.
Here.
Mrs. Herman.
Here.
Mr. Emig.
Here.
Mr. Eifert.
Here.
Mr. DeLauder.
Here.
Mr. Deschaux.
Here.
Mr. Cook.
Here.
And Mrs. Britton.
Here.
All are present.
Okay, thank you. First up on our agenda, we have our first public comment period. This is a 3-minute period for items on or off of the agenda. If you have anything you would like to comment on, please come to the microphones and state your name and address for the record. Okay, seeing no one moving, we will move on to our Crabtree Rohrbal RBC presentation on the draft Act 34 booklet related to our building project.
Good to see everybody tonight. We're here to look at a draft booklet for Act 34 hearing. This is another milestone in the project as we develop moving forward. Act 34 is required on any project that goes over 20% of additions or new construction. And you have it whether you have a PlanCon project or not, a reimbursable project or not. You have to just have a reimbursable project, so it dovetails into the PlanCon reimbursement process. Essentially what it is a informational meeting for the public to notify them of details of the project, including the total project cost. And as part of that Act 34 booklet, you will be voting on a resolution setting that total project cost, both total building cost and total maximum project cost. So we'll go through that in detail a little bit later, but as you can see on the front here, we work with the administration to first establish a good day that the Act 34 can take place, that it fits well in our schedule so it doesn't delay us, but also that the ideal time frame would be end of December. We don't want to have it around the holidays. We want to make sure there's a lot of public attending that. So the date the administration chose was January 9th at 7 o'clock in the high school auditorium. Once you do act on the resolution and approve the booklet, I think we're targeting the November 14th meeting. That booklet will be made available to the public. So what you see is actually what will be made available to the public and what will be handed out. This is in draft form at this time, so we wanted to make sure we get it ahead of the board and review it and make sure there's no questions or comments. So this is just an outline of the table of contents, and these are the topics we'll go through during the actual Act 34 hearing. And we'll have a PowerPoint that we'll present during the hearing, and then everything during the hearing will be transcribed by a stenographer. So at the beginning of the meeting, your solicitor will call the meeting to order. It'll be followed by your superintendent will go through the project need, which is outlined in, you can actually, Jen, go ahead and scroll through there. The first part of the booklet is stating the project need. You've kind of been at this for 2 years, so I'm not going to sit here and read this. You will have we will have a final copy of this available prior to the 14th date, but this is the basically the need for the project, why you need the high school. So going on, and then another requirement that we have to present are the options that we are considered. If you notice here, these are actually the options that are tied to the study, not the options that we recently looked at the beginning of the summer. PlanCon actually looks at the study. Everything's tied to your study. So even though we did, you kind of went above and beyond with what we looked at before the summer. So this just looks at the options in the study and what was considered. And then this is another requirement for the booklet. This is from your Part A that was submitted to the department, and basically it's just a listing of your current facilities and capacities of each one of them. And then we'll go into the project description. This kind of gives an overview of the description of the building, talks a little bit about site work. We go into a little bit about construction and duration. Once again, this is kind of informing the public of the project. You keep scrolling down there. It talks about the building program and some of the systems and the building codes that we are required to adhere to. This slide will actually insert the site plan for the booklet. We will keep the floor plans omitted, and that's typically done for security reasons. In today's environment, you don't want to have the plans out there circulating in the public. During the actual Act 34 hearing, we will project the plans and we will describe the building and how it looks to the public, but we won't include them in the booklet. And then if you keep going, I believe there's a page break issue there, but just DO2, these are plan conforms of Part D. And Part D is it deals with accounting based on your estimates. So this is basically the cost. And I will say, I think we gave you last time in your booklet at the retreat a very detailed cost estimate. PDE tracks their costs very differently, so it's going to be hard to kind of correlate their two. But just know that if you go to the second page, DO3, I'll draw your attention to line item 10 down, or excuse me, line item I down here, that total project cost. Those two numbers do align from before, but when you try to track one to the other, they're a little different on how PD wants to see numbers broken out. DO4 is just further breakdown of project costs. They actually take site work out of the total project cost from a reimbursement calculation perspective. So this is just more calculations from the PD side of things. And then this is kind of the a summary of the estimated reimbursement. And what this does at this time is identifies, if you go to the bottom, Jen, the maximum eligible reimbursement for the project. Now, this is the maximum eligible. This is multiplied times your aid ratio, and your aid ratio is a fraction. So we're estimating in the $4 million range. Ken will get into that a little bit later. Do you have the, I believe there's scenarios we're looking at of getting reimbursement versus not getting reimbursement, and he'll go into some of what the actual estimated reimbursement is, not the maximum eligible. And then D20 is kind of the essence of the hearing. So if you scroll down a little bit more, one of the purposes of the Act 34 hearing will be to for the board to approve this number at the November 14th meeting. This is your maximum building project cost. And then below that, there's a calculation of what is that building construction cost times 1.08%. So the department will allow you to go 1.8 or 8% over your maximum approved amount, but anything over that would require a second hearing. So on bid day, if the bids are over that amount, which of course we would never anticipate they would be, but that's the limit of where you can approve the construction costs. And next I'm going to turn it over to financials.
Great, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. So the project need and the project description have been gone through. The last part of the Act 34 hearing, for those who have not been through one, is to review the financial alternatives under the state's guidelines. And so there's 6, 7, 8 pages here that are pretty much dictated by the state of what you should look at. And we have shared those over the last year plus in terms of looking at alternatives and what we think the structure may be and so on. So the very first page, there are four basic alternatives that are noted there. You're actually going to be doing a combination 1 and 2 because you have some cash that you're going to throw at the project in terms of phasing in the appropriate millage over a period of time, and we'll look at that structure. It's the same thing that Lauren shared with you at the retreat, the same numbers that we've been looking at in terms of how we're going to do the structure. At the bottom of this page, you heard Scott talk about the state reimbursement. Basically about 8.64%, so 8 cents on the dollar, if reimbursement is available, okay? So, but for really how we've been doing it for the last 5 years now, is we run everything at, and that's the bold underlined sentence at the bottom of this page, on the top of the next page, we run everything at, you know, at 100%. Because we have no idea what's going to happen with respect to PlancCon going forward, okay? This next page, or this continuum then on this page, are we basically cost out the various different alternatives, the lowest cost one being the general obligation issue of $64,250,000. The next page then goes into something important for the state of what this would look like if we were going out and just doing a straight plain vanilla mortgage, if you will, straight level debt. And so that the state says, okay, if you had to do this on a level debt basis, sort of a same thing as a mortgage, higher interest up front, lower principal up front, higher principal, you know, as the mortgage is paid off, and then lower interest, you would need 6.46 mils, okay? And these are called direct costs, i.e. the interest expense and the principal payback, the bricks and mortar costs, and then there's also some indirect costs that we'll take a look at as well. But because we're going to do this on a wraparound function and a wraparound structure, the costs are about 2.16 mils. And we spread that out over a period of time that we'll take a look at some of the graphs. So the next page then goes through the indirect costs. So whenever you do a new building or even renovations, you know, extensive renovations, you're going to most of the time have some type of costs. And there could be some type of savings too. You know, not knowing all the utilities and so on, you can actually see some savings depending on what you would be, you know, going, you know, coming from, going to. But the estimates are about $236,000, which equates down at the bottom to 0.18 mils. So when you add the 2.16 and the 0.18, you're at 2.34 mils of the direct and the indirect costs. And that's something, again, this is all state driven in terms of how they want to see the possible cost for the project. Next page then, Jen. Okay, so these are just the amortization schedules. $32,125,000 for the first series of bonds, $32,125,000 for the second series of bonds, which then gets us to this study that you're familiar with, what Lauren and I share with you. So this is your existing indebtedness. These are the two, you know, proposed no state reimbursement, gross debt service. These are the district reserves, a little shy of $6 million. And then this is in essence, you know, we use the value of a mill at $1.3 million constant, and on the conservative side. We use current rates plus 0.5% contingency. We have no idea what's going to happen, obviously, with rates, but one would think that they're heading higher based on what the Fed actions are trying to do. I think we had that discussion here in the last couple months, and then local effort being 100%. And this is what your costs are spread out over a period of time. You've saved some money over the years that allows you to phase in the mills all at once. Back pre-Act 1, or you know, back 10, 11 years ago, we were discussing this project, and you needed 2 mills. You could go up 2 mills. Okay, Act 1 obviously puts limitations on what your index is, and therefore you have to fit this 0.27 every year into what your index is. But what you are doing here, ladies and gentlemen, as we've shared with you, is nothing different than anybody in the state of Pennsylvania school district who is looking at a building project. They have to pretty much structure it in this manner, wraparound fashion. Your debt's not that long, it goes out to 27, so 10 years. And you pretty much have to phase things in over a period of time. Okay, you have to be disciplined to do that. Because funding 2 mills in your budget next year is impossible because your index doesn't give you 2 mills. Okay? Now, you may find that one year we can go up maybe 0.35, 0.4. And the next year maybe we need to be a little less because we have other things going on. This is just this is an illustration, sort of a balance sheet of a point in time. We know we need to get to here based on these assumptions, Again, we can't predict the rates, but we know we need to get here. How we get there over a period of time is really up to you. Okay? So the balance of the book, go ahead, Jen, I'll just go through the balance of the book here, which is pretty much just questions and so on. So this is the resolution that you will be adopting, going through this project at your November 14th meeting. Okay? And Scott made reference to the maximum or the total project costs and maximum building construction costs, all is required by the law. So this will be subject to your approval on the 14th. And then you're also then at that point authorizing this booklet in final form. Scott and John are going to be tweaking it a little bit. They need to get the state to sign off on it. The state will look at this here in the next couple of weeks, right? Yeah, prior to the meeting. So you'll adopt this, and then the next thing will be legal certificate just for the adoption, and then the public hearing notice needs to go in the paper, not less than 20 days. So realistically, once you adopt the resolution on November 14th, you simply just publish this. Doesn't matter when there's no reason to wait. Just get it done. It must, we have had some instances where the ad never got to the paper in time, and all of a sudden we're having a legal hearing. It's not a legal hearing. So since once you pass the resolution establishing the date for Jan 9, you might as well just go ahead and publish the ad.
And what our plan is, once, if the resolution is approved by the board in November, we will be publishing this notice, definitely. However, we're also going to then, Brad and I and Tracy are going to work together to formulate a one-pager on the project, and we are going to mail it out via U.S. mail to all of the taxable inhabitants of the district. So everybody will receive a mailing at that point.
Yeah.
So if they don't see it in the newspaper, hopefully they'll see it in their mailbox.
Yeah, the whole goal, as Scott said, is to get people to come to your hearing to see what the project is all about, okay? Spending any type of money, whether it's $1 or 64. You want the people to come out and talk. You want the people to ask questions of the architect, ask questions of us. It's not a debate, okay? The board really has no role except to sit there and listen. Okay, the board president may be opening something, and superintendent obviously may be doing some work, but your job as the board is to sit there and listen to the input from the public. But it's a very good process. I've done, can't tell you many hundreds of these things, and done well and done effectively. The good firms that you have here, it'll be a good evening. It'll be a good evening because there are normally some good ideas and suggestions that come out of it. Mainly from the architectural side. They may ask Scott a question, hey, have you thought of this? And he says, no, that's a great idea. We will think of that, and we'll study it. Someone may ask us a financial question that we haven't thought of.
Yeah, and to touch on Ken's thought, the format of the meeting, so we'll go through the booklet, we'll go through our presentation, then it'll open up to a public comment session. There will be the ability in the advertisement to sign up ahead of time, but we're probably going to follow the same format as your board meetings, 3-minute time limit, and then we'll go as long as we need. There is no closing the meeting until all the public comments are received. And then also, what we'll try to do is any question we can readily answer, either us or Ken or the administration will readily answer it. If it's something that takes a little more research, then probably what we'll do is formulate a list of questions and do a FAQ afterwards, and question and answer that'll be issued back to the public and maybe posted on the website. And then for those who aren't able to attend the meeting, there's a period of time where they can issue a written question to the district.
So any questions on this draft booklet? It'll be maybe tweaked a little bit, but your resolution in November pretty much adopts this, okay? And then it's the public document at that point in time with respect to people being able to, look at it and so on.
I have a question regarding the financing part of it. You're listing two separate bond issues there, one in 2018, one in 2019. Knowing that the rates are potentially going up, they're headed in that direction. The advantages and disadvantages of doing them in two separate ones versus locking it all in right now,
Yep.
paying the extra costs. I'm just curious what the thoughts are on that.
Good question. we'll dust off the crystal ball, you know, when we get to 18. Getting the money, it's really a cost analysis. Spreading it out over 2 years allows you to phase it in. Remember how we're phasing in over a period of time? As opposed to maybe accelerating the 0.27, and maybe you need to have more up front, or maybe you need to add more than the 6 million that you have allocated. Okay? So getting all the money first accelerates either additional funds from you or additional millage through your index greater than the 0.27. If we knew rates were going to be a certain percent higher, and it's really a cost analysis that we'll do on the do in 2018, assuming that's when we do the first borrowing. If the break even is 30 basis points, 0.3% between getting the money now and getting the money in 19, and we think rates are going to go higher than 30 basis points, we may get it all. Okay? For illustration purposes, we're setting it up this way. But very good question, Mr. Cook, in terms of if we knew what was going to happen in 1 year later. They're calling for 3 increases in 18. That's what they're supposedly, but they were calling for 3 this year or 4 or so this year. Okay? So we know we're going to see something. Rates are going to be higher. So the first piece, we're pretty comfortable with the 50 basis point contingency we have built in there. The second piece, not as much, okay, in terms of comfort. But we will look at that. And if we think that the break even is less than where we think rates are going to go, we may want to get everything. But it's a good question. We sort of monitor that all the time, try to look at that.
If I understand this, all this financing is for the new high school, correct?
Yes, right, Scott? Yeah,
And we
this is
had
a high school
talked
project.
earlier, is there anything projected to update anything in the current high school as far to become an intermediate school that we have to make any changes?
So as part of the option you decided to move forward with, there was a $5 million renovation addition project onto there. This hearing and these numbers just focus right now on the high school because that's the reimbursable project. And then when you get to the intermediate school, that'll be a separate project that's handled on its own. But from a financing standpoint, have you looked at anything on that? Yeah.
Jen,
We put together something a while
Yeah.
back, but it wasn't as of, this,
Right.
this does not include that $5 million piece.
So basically, when this project's done, then we start on,
yeah,
look at the other one.
Timing
can you go
wise,
back to the millage
Timing
study
wise,
for
we'll
me?
probably start designing that
Yeah.
spring of next year, so that in the construction phasing, you're completing the high school in the summer of 2020. That's also when you're going to be taking down the intermediate school, and you're going to want to convert the existing high school to the intermediate school and do those renovations. Most likely, there's going to be enough to do there where we might even start it earlier in the spring, or I know the roof needs replaced. That's one of the things we've identified there. Maybe that occurs summer of 2019 ahead of time, so you give a little more time ahead of that. Those are the details we'll probably start to look at this coming spring.
Let's look at this page a second, okay? If we look at this page, and I'll try to give you just a quick and dirty on the back of the napkin here. Let's say the number is 5 million, okay? You see how this is the existing debt, so these are called wraparounds. We've been through that where we have just interest up here, and then we put all the principal down in these years as this goes away. So now let's say we have 5 million that we need to finance, okay, for the additional work. So now we're going to go out here to 41 and 42. Okay, we're going to put the 5 million, and let's just say that the interest on that is 4% a year, so that's 200 grand. Okay, so 200 grand divided by $1.3 million is going to be less than 2/10, right? It's going to be whatever 0.17, 0.18, whatever. We'd probably put that right here. Okay, so the additional 5 million I think is very manageable for you based off of this structure. And again, that's just a quick and dirty, but 5 million put out here at 4%, 200 grand of interest a year, you're going to have, this 0.27 is going to go down to whatever, 0.17 or whatever it's going to go down to. But that's in essence how you would finance the 5 million, assuming that there's not additional cash the district has. Who knows what the bids are on the high school project, So it's something we thought about from a structure standpoint, but we're just not there yet in terms of, fine tuning it like we're getting every month we get closer with the high school project as to what the structure is. But that's probably how we would start it.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, gentlemen, thank you.
Thanks
You
for your
bet.
time.
Thank you.
And this booklet will be available the week before the board meeting for review.
And on the 14th, I'm assuming your council will be here with respect to the appropriate resolutions.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good night.
Thanks.
Next up is Board President's communication. I would ask the board to plan to stay after tonight's meeting for a brief 5 or 10 minute executive session to discuss a legal matter that has come to our attention today. So if you could plan to stay afterwards tonight. With that, we'll move on to our committee reports. First up, we have our combined comprehensive planning and curriculum development committees. So we have Mr. DeLauder, Mrs. Maley, and Mrs. Herman.
Okay. I'm still trying to process what they all talked about. There was a lot tonight, so.
Do you have Chris's
And
version?
Mrs. Kroom, she's drinking a lot of coffee, a lot of caffeine. Or something.
No, not this late.
We talked about a lot tonight. First thing she did is went over our preliminary PSSA and Keystone data that came back from the state. We will see that presentation at the November meeting. What it does not include at this point is the PVAS and school performance, the SPP, school performance profile. As we all know, there's been a lot of activity going on in the school since school started. The K-6 ELA teachers, they've started working on their curriculum, looking at common assessments, and aligning all the materials. K-6 math, district has contract with Everyday Math Consultant, and the consultant will be coming in and helping the teachers have a better understanding of the Everyday Math program, and will also be supporting the principals in refining the observations of Everyday Math. Grade 3 to 6 science teachers are working with Mr. Benton on STEM to research materials and successful programs. And again, as you're aware, may or may not be aware, they went out yesterday to a school district out in the Pittsburgh area and looked at their STEM program as well as some other items out there, and I'm assuming we'll talk about that later. In 8th grade ELA, teachers are working to align the curriculum to standards, looking at their resources, and they're in the process of writing their common assessments. 7th grade is working with the comprehension toolkit, which somebody, I'm assuming, will expand upon that at some point. It's used heavily in the elementary schools. The toolkit helps to bridge the gap between schools. 7th, 8th grade math, teachers are working to write curriculum, common assessments, and again, to align all materials. The high school, teachers are trained in CDT administration and report interpretation, and CDT stands for, again,
Classroom diagnostic tools.
Classroom diagnostic tools, thank you. Okay.
Say it all together.
Yes, yes. And the MAP benchmark assessments are going to be administered in September, January, and in the spring in K to 8. And let me see, principals are working to create protocols for data analysis, and each building continues to build their PBIS program. And we're looking at sending our high school teachers to be trained in AP in order to teach those courses. So again, that's an up and coming project. Let's see what else. We talked about a little bit about. Why can't I get this to go down?
Two fingers.
Let's see if
Oh.
too far. I hate.
You're good. Is that the end?
No, it's not the end of it. There's a lot more.
Oh. Never too far.
Keep looking like All right. At our, taking a look at our comprehensive plan, we went over the adoption of PA ETEP. Teachers have also been writing their SLOs, which are student learning objectives, and their differentiated supervision are being submitted this month. Grade level meetings and department meetings are taking place in all buildings to help build cohesive curriculum and instruction. And we're looking at implementing parent conferences K to 12. So instead of just isolating it through the K to 6, we like to have that and that model throughout the high school K to, or the school district K to 12. Let's see here. Why does it keep going? I don't know. Technology. I broke it. But that was pretty much the gist of what we talked about as
Okay.
on there. I think
The curriculum guide, the high school curriculum.
oh
guide.
yes, Mr. Wassler gave us a framework that again he will be discussing at the November meeting as well, of how he wants to align the curriculum guide for next year, and so again he'll give a report on that.
Upgraded novelist.
And then we all at the November meeting we will also be voting on an updated 8th grade novel list, obviously at the intermediate school. They have been researched and updated, and some of the novels are linked to Dover Proud and has been somewhat cross-referenced to DHS to ensure the novels are not repeated in various grade levels. And we're going to, and again I say that when they gave up the list, there were a couple that the high school is currently using that was apparently not on an approved list. So we're going to take a look at that and just again make sure that those are all in order. And then, like I said, we talked about the course of studies, and Mr. Wasser will take care of that, and we'll discuss a little bit more at our November meeting. I think that's it. Mrs. Manley, Mrs. Herman, you always say that.
Well, then we talked about the comprehensive plan, the 3 goals
The
and
12
how, but
goals.
it all pretty much, everything that Tracy had already presented pretty much fell in line with what our goals were, and we're moving on the right track.
Any questions for them? It's a shame you don't have much to do on that committee, but
I know, I said, I can't wait till the day that we have nothing to discuss in curriculum.
I've never seen a profession that uses acronyms the way the education field does. PDTSLO, elemental P. All right, next is facilities. Mr. Emig, Mr. Rawhauser, and Mrs. Brenton.
Unlike the curriculum committee, our meeting ended at 6:02. Current issues, however,
We're just that efficient.
we're that efficient. Anyway, some of the things that we had talked about was, as you all heard on Tuesday night, Crawltown, we do have an interested individual. I believe he did have a question on the oil tank, but he's been back numerous times and as far as we know, he has not said anything about the price of the building, but he is very well interested. There's a new DVR coming at the high school on Monday, which will have the access to view 32 cameras. Currently, the one that we have is capable to view 20 cameras. As you all know, we had a terrific storm here back on Fair Week, and there were 5 trees and stumps removed from Dover Elementary part of the playground. And so if you haven't been back to the playground, you probably won't know where them trees are anymore. There is still storm damage at North Salem and the intermediate school that still needs cleaned up. And the new pickup truck is currently getting a new plow on. But the remainder of our meeting consisted of Mr. Nelson brought out sketches and plans and explained to us the new high school where all the rooms are going to be, everything that's taking place. And then we also talked about the currently property projections coming to the Dover community, which is not very good. We're looking at what, Mr. Nelson, 2,000?
Probably 2,000 units in the next 10 years.
And in them 10 years, we're looking at 1.5 students per unit. So, Mr. Rawhauser, Mrs. Britton, anything that we might have missed?
You got it.
I don't have anything other than, like you said, all these new buildings coming, it's just depressing.
So, and I know that Mr. Nelson said that there's like 40-some people in all these committees for the new building, so every time they turn around, they're revising something, so.
We want the plan to be perfect.
That's all that we have under facilities.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Emick. Human and Fiscal Resources, Mr. Cook.
Unlike the Facilities Committee, and more in line with the Curriculum Committee, our meeting ended at 7:05. I'm sorry I was late. But we did have a very healthy discussion tonight. Go down through, as we've said many times, when it comes to budgets, we're currently in a 3-year look and see. We're looking back a year, we're currently where we're at, we're looking ahead a year. It's hard to keep it all straight, I think, sometimes. But just to give you a few updates, 17-18 state budget update. The drama lives on. Currently, the latest version has been passed by the House recently, has not been passed by the Senate yet. That vote was 105 to 81, so it still needs to go through the Senate. So these things that are part of that revenue package are not concrete yet. They're not for sure, but a few things there worth mentioning, and we talked about details that are located within the framework of that revenue bill related to the school code. Couple things that are worth mentioning. There is a stipulation in there requiring school board members to achieve some training, some at the initial onset of their term, and then again if they're reelected. So that's something that's new. They continue to keep the Plan-Con moratorium in place. As has been talked about pretty much at length here, with no new projects being able to be applied for as of now. There's some furlough language and some details regarding potential furloughs if that comes up. There's some language there that's a little bit different from current status. There's some discussion. We had a lengthy discussion about our lunch program, and the state does have lunch program requirements in there. I can share, we did pass a bill, I believe came out of the Safe and Supportive, or a policy that came out of Safe and Supportive Schools regarding the lunch and how we're handling past due balances, negative balances, that sort of thing. We got a little bit of an update there on where we're at right now with our negative balance and how it applies to different buildings within the district here. And the bad news is there is a negative, like there always would be. It's higher than it was a year ago. The good news is we're nowhere near where other districts are by comparison. So some of the procedures that have been put in place are definitely helping with the collection portion of it. So right now, it's a work in progress. There was some discussion about the basic education funding, which is something that we all need to know when it comes to what a revenue package looks like, what we're going to be working with. And one of the stipulations in this revenue package, which was recently passed, was using the funding formula that was set using data as of July 1st. So as time goes on, things keep getting changed. So at least they're setting a benchmark now that would be utilized. There's a lot of other things involved in it, but there are some of the highlighted items. Next item on the agenda. is the 16-17 audit update. We're currently in the process of going through our budget audit, our year-end audit for 16-17. We will have a presentation next month, correct? Is that correct?
Yes, Boyer and Ritter will be here on November 14th to present the annual financial report, and at that time, it will be up for approval on that date.
Okay, so just a couple things there. Very preliminary numbers. They're still tweaking all the details. There will show a surplus of approximately $2.8 million in our end-of-year numbers for 16-17, and that is almost 100% attributable to the PlanCon reimbursement, which came our way last year. It was not something that was budgeted for, nor should it have been, because there was no guarantee that it was going to come our way. So there's where the majority of that surplus will show up. So we'll have continuing conversations about that surplus then as time goes on. Next item is our Act 1 resolution, which also will be coming up as well next month, correct, Jen? So we'll have to vote on that. That's the resolution that gives us the parameters of what tax increase we're capable of giving to the public without public referendum. It's 2.4% increase is the base number with a maximum of 3.2%. So that's kind of where we're at now with that resolution that will be coming our way. That doesn't mean we're doing that. It just gives us the parameters with which we would have to operate. Moving ahead to the 18-19 budget process, which is in its early stages right now. New packets are being formulated, so we're already starting to work towards the 18-19 budget as well. And business offices, working hard at getting that kind of information out to the administration, who will then give its input, and that helps with the formulation of next year's budget. From a personnel standpoint, tomorrow there will be a posting going out for the assistant superintendent's position. Between now and December 15th, that position will be posted. So that's interesting information for all. And Christina also shared that at this point, the custodians and food services are fully staffed, which is a great accomplishment. So, good news. Okay. Knock on wood. So that's all I have. Did I miss anything, Nate?
In the words of Mrs. Herman, great, good job. Now, any questions for Mr. Cook?
Yeah, I just have one. What kind of training do they expect the school board to have from the state?
I can't answer that. I don't even know if it's the state that's going to be giving it, but
Yeah, so right now, I had sent you guys an email earlier as the PASBO legislative update, and in there it gives all the updates on the fiscal code. But they said, areas like policy, financials, and things like that. So just various aspects of school business.
Are they going to include a stipend for us?
They give you lunch, Terry.
Whoopee.
Maybe PSBA will do it.
I'll recommend that for you.
Any other questions?
Well, Terry, as long as you've been on the board, you might know more than the one that's telling us what we're to do.
You could be a presenter.
That's not negative.
I know.
All right, safe and supportive schools, Mr. Deschelles.
We started at 6, ended at 6, so.
I'm coming to your committee next month.
You had to beat us, didn't you?
So I have just a small update for you. Mr. Rahauser, you asked last time at Tuesday's meeting about the school resource officers contract. And that is scheduled to be up for committee in November. So I worked with Chief Bensel this morning a little bit, talking about the contract. So we'll have a draft contract for planning in November, and then if the board so wishes, we will put that up for approval in January. The expiration date is January 31st.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to our miscellaneous category. Mrs. Kroom, is there anything you wanted to add tonight?
I would like to just kind of share our trip yesterday. It was myself, it was Victoria, Troy, Galen, and Chuck. Not Galen, and Jared and Chuck. We went to Elizabeth Forward School by Pittsburgh. What was most impressive about the school was their STEM program K-12 that was truly developed with hard work and from the heart. This is not a rich district. They don't have a lot of money, but what you could tell is they did it with their own hands. It was teachers who understood STEM, who truly believed in student empowerment, and the kids were amazing. Everywhere we went, kids were tour guides, and they were amazing at every level. From the elementary school, we saw the interactions, we saw the technology, to the high school. The curriculum aligned with this higher order thinking. It was very exciting. The other really good piece we saw was we do a lot of these things, and we have the ability to do a lot of these things. The interesting part was, now that they are known for this, they have partnered with Carnegie Mellon and some businesses, and now they do have tons of bells and whistles kinds of things, and we agreed that for the most part, they weren't something you needed. They were fun, they were cool, but they weren't something you needed. So I think any of you, it was a great day. The intermediate school, the middle school, how they aligned their Encore program. The kids in 6th and 7th learn basic skills in home ec and in phys ed and all of those. And then in 8th grade, it's entrepreneurial. They have a candy making business. The kids make the candy, make the mold, make the wrapper, create commercials, sell it, document the money. And at the high school, their courses were very much like that, very real life. How do the kids transfer all of these skills out into the community? It was very impressive. We were very impressed, and we learned a lot of other things. But at some things, Troy was great because Troy asked the question, how does this affect achievement? And I think that's where we had the edge on it. You know, they couldn't answer some of our questions about achievement, and we thought, what the heck? We're ahead of them. So it was great. It was a great trip, and I think we learned a lot. Anyone want to add anything? It was we were in the car longer than we slept, or we're at the place, just have to say. Yes. Actually, Jen walked in my office this morning and said, why did you take that van? I'm like, I don't know, I was given those keys. Yeah. But no, it was a great trip, and it really made us look at our curriculum differently for kids. It was very, very child-centered, and it was exciting. So I just like to share that. It was great.
Any questions for Mrs. Kroom? Okay, I just wanted to add one thing. At Tuesday's meeting, the board unanimously approved the appointment of Dr. Patricia Maloney as our temporary assistant superintendent. And for those of you who haven't had the opportunity to meet her, she is here with us tonight. So I just wanted to say welcome, and we're looking forward to great things from you in the next couple of months. So thank you. Anything else from any other board members?
Just because I don't know anything about the high school, I'd love to hear some of the things that Officer Allen does, since we're going to renew his contract.
Right. I actually have asked Chief Bensel to put together some data points to share with the board at the November planning meeting. So he's going to put some data together. Him and Officer Allen will come, and they'll talk about it.
Great. That's great. Thanks, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
Yeah, and one more thing.
Okay.
After the meeting on Tuesday night and all the little things that went on before the meeting, I was so proud when I went out of here. And then last night we went to the high school for the CTE program, and Chuck and I had a long talk with the other Chuck, and that I was like, wow, I was just so excited. I'm just so excited right now about everything that's going on. And then at the curriculum meeting tonight, I was like even more excited. So it's like I am just really excited right now for the district. I'm so proud. I'm so excited.
That's great. Great.
Stop it.
Anybody else? Okay. With that, we come to our last public comment period. If anybody has anything they'd like to comment on, please come to the microphones at this time. Okay. Future meetings. Our next board action meeting will be Tuesday, November 14th at 7:00 p.m. here. And then board committee meetings will be Thursday, November 16th at 6 p.m. and the board planning committee board planning meeting that same night at 7 p.m. If there is nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a second? We are out of here. Thank you.
Sorry.